Hello everyone, today's video is about the Age of Enlightenment. By the time we're done here, you should be able to explain what the Age of Enlightenment is and explain how the scientific revolution laid the groundwork for it. You should also be able to explain what all of these people did for the Enlightenment. Hobbes, Locke, Montesquieu, Diderot, Rousseau, and Wollstonecraft. And you should be able to identify aspects of Enlightenment ideals that exist in America today. And as a hint, there's a picture of the Declaration of Independence right there on the slide. You should also be able to define natural law, social contract, natural rights, and philosophes. So, the scientific revolution convinced people that reason and logic worked, that you didn't have to rely on these classical, ancient views of the world that were obviously incorrect. You didn't have to rely on religion to tell you how the world operated. And people began to take that a step further and said, well, if people can use reason to figure out how the world works, why can't we use reason to figure out human nature and how the human condition works? And that's what led to the Age of Enlightenment, which was a big change in the way people viewed their place in the world. And it changed people's views on religion, it changed their views on equality, on the role of government, changed a lot of different things that we're going to talk about. Enlightenment era thinkers, known as philosophes, looked to study and uncover natural laws, which were laws that governed the way humans work, human nature. We have to start with the social contract. The social contract is a theory about the relationship between a state or a government and its people. The state of nature would mean that there is no government or ruler, and people are governed solely by their thoughts and by their conscience. They have no government to tell them what to do. On the opposite end of that would be absolute monarchy, where the government tells you exactly what to think and how to act and what you'll do and all of that. Thomas Hobbes, who's pictured there on top, and John Locke, who's pictured on the bottom, had two very different views on the way the social contract should govern human nature. Hobbes believed that people were inherently bad and they had to be controlled. And he thought that if you had a state of nature where there was no government and no ruler, that people would just lie, cheat, and steal, and there'd be a constant state of war and there'd be absolute chaos. So he firmly believed in a strong government. He actually wrote a political treatise called Leviathan. Leviathan is a term for a humongous beast, really. John Locke really took the opposite tack, and he said people are inherently good, and all people have natural rights. These are not rights that are given to them by a king. These are not rights given to them by a government. These are rights that are given to them by God, and every person has these rights from the moment they are born. These include life, liberty, property. There are some others we're going to talk about. But he believed that natural rights were more important than any law that could be imposed on someone by a government. Which is a big change, because we're coming out of the age of absolutism where strong government's really kind of the norm, and Locke is saying, well, that's really not the way the world should work. Philosophe translates from French as lover of wisdom. And philosophe is a term given to a name, I should say, given to a bunch of different people in Europe during this time who sought to study natural law. They made observations on government, rights of the people, human nature, all that kind of stuff. There are some big studies of government done during this time using Enlightenment ideals. Montesquieu, who's pictured on the left there, is a French philosopher. He is a person who advocated for separation of powers. This is, again, the age of absolutism, so all of the power is pretty much in the hands of one person, a monarch in most countries. Montesquieu said there needed to be other people who helped run the government, and they would basically limit the power of the other areas of the government. It's called separation of powers. You may also know it as checks and balances, which we do have in the United States. In modern times, the executive branch of government, which is the president, the legislative branch, which is Congress, judicial branch, which is the courts. And they have constitutionally given checks on each other where they can limit powers of the other branches of government, and it keeps the president from becoming too powerful or Congress Montesquieu was really a pioneer in that regard and believed that should be the norm. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, another believer in natural law and kind of a dissolution of the social contract, as it were. He thought that government's control over the people should be at a minimum. He also advocated that people should essentially do away with any government that sought to limit their natural rights, life, liberty, and property. There was also a big spread of knowledge during this time. Diderot was a French scholar who composed over about a period of 25 years an encyclopedia, which is a 28-volume compendium, for lack of a better term, of knowledge and philosophy from the Age of Enlightenment. It had knowledge, it had articles by people like Montesquieu advocating for changes in the way government worked, and really this was the first place where a lot of people had heard of natural law and this idea that they had these rights from God. And governments and churches, as a result, really hated it because they had traditionally held all the power, and then you start to have people pushing back saying they have natural laws, and the governments were very frustrated by that, obviously. There was also advocacy for equal rights during this time. Mary Wollstonecraft is one example of that. She's one of the early feminists, really. She said that the view that women were not equal to men was flawed in a very fundamental way. She said that women appeared to be inferior to men because they did not have the same opportunities in life. One of those opportunities being education. And she said it was important for women to care for the family and, kind of be the moral bedrock of a house. But she also said that women should be educated. There should be equal education for girls and boys, which most people at the time did not agree with. And she was very controversial for that reason. Even if you haven't heard of Mary Wollstonecraft before, you probably heard of her daughter, Mary Shelley, who wrote the book Frankenstein. That will do it for today. As always, ask your teacher if you have any questions.